I mean, this guy's taking his free time to drive all the way down to the jail complex in South Phoenix. He's gone through whatever rigmarole you got to do to even get in there. And he's sitting here talking to me, an inmate, by my estimation, completely worthless, going nowhere, loser, trying to explain to me that I don't have to fit into any box to be welcome into God's kingdom. Changed my life forever. Welcome back to the Struggle and Strive podcast. My name is Estil Wallace. Today we are going to continue in our series on the 12 steps. Today we're going to talk about step 2. Brace yourself, put on your seatbelt. We are going to talk about spiritual stuff today. This is one of the places where a lot of people get stuck. And so before we really get too far into it, I want to share my experience with spirituality, with coming to step 2, with coming to believe, and some of my journey. So I'm adopted. My parents were alcoholics. They've been dead a long time. I went through foster care as an infant, and as a toddler. I was adopted by my grandparents. You know, in their defense, they weren't really engaged, and I was a tough kid to keep tabs on. And I wasn't raised all that closely. It was the 80s. I was being raised by people from the silent generation. I got no stones to throw at them. They're real decent folks. But I got to tell you, my friend group was my family when I was a child. And, you know, my grandparents, as well as other people in my immediate family, were very religious. And they were religious in sort of an old school Lutheran, very pious, very exclusive kind of way. To sum it up, by the time I was about 12, the message that I heard was that I was never going to amount to anything and that I was going to hell. And I was sure of both of those things by the time I was about 12. So going through adolescence and becoming a young adult and, you know, living on the streets and being homeless and, you know, in and out of trap houses, in and out of jail, I never even had this idea that God's going to help me. Like, I wasn't sure if I believed there was a God. When I started working through the 12 steps and I started going into step 2, I was working with a guy who was been sober longer than me. I think he was 4 or 5 years in, and was walking me through it. And he said, all right, step 2, this is where we're gonna learn to pray. And I said, yeah, I gotta interrupt. I've got a problem with prayer. And he looked me dead in the eyes and talked over me and said, I don't care. And I said, yeah, but I want to tell you about like my church hurt and all this stuff. And he was like, seriously miss me with the whole thing. I don't care what your negative experience was with religion or God. I literally don't care at all. What I care about is that you do the actions that I'm asking you to do. That's what I care about. And his ability to override, you know, my overactive mind, where I wanted to banter the, you know, well, what about this and what about this and what about, you know, how do you explain that? You know, he wasn't even going to have that argument with me. He wasn't interested in it. You know, he was my sponsor, and I lived in a halfway house. So I got sober before the parity law, before insurance paid for treatment. So this is like July of 2004. I'm living in a Central City halfway house in the hood in Central Phoenix. I was homeless before I went to jail, and now I'm in the halfway house after jail. So I'm not killing it at this point, right? I'm not crushing life. I wear donated clothing from the property. I eat whatever they cook there. I ride the bus everywhere. I just finally got a job making $8 an hour moving furniture 6 days a week. This is my life, right? And I go to 12-step meetings basically every night. And I've got this sponsor. And if I don't communicate with the sponsor, the halfway house is going to throw me out, right? That's one of the rules, is I have to communicate with my sponsor daily. I'm like, well, I'm not really comfortable with prayer. And he's like, well, I'm not comfortable signing your slip. See, he had to sign my slip. I had to prove that I met with him. And I'm like, geez, man, you get all aggressive. You feel like you're overreacting. And he's like, look, man, you don't have to believe what I believe. You don't have to, you know, they can be empty words that come out of your mouth. But it's a muscle that we're going to start exercising. And I want you to get used to the action of prayer. And I want you to just try it on like a t-shirt, and we're just gonna try it on, and we're just gonna do it for a while. Okay? Whether you believe it or not, I'm not asking you to believe anything. He could see the doubt in my eyes, and he narrowed it down to this. He said, do you believe that I suffer from the same illness that you suffer from? Now, I had heard his story. He was one of the people bringing 12-step meetings into the county jail when I was in Durango jail. And so I'd heard enough of the way he talked. I knew he had been through what I was going through. And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, next question. Do you believe that what I'm doing to stay sober and sane is working? And I had to admit, yeah, you smell nice, and you drove here in a car, and you seem to be pretty happy. So yeah, I guess it's working. He says, all right, here's the $1 million question, kid. I was 26 when I walked in. He said, here's the $1 million question, kid. Do you believe that if you do all the same stuff I'm doing, whether you believe it's going to work or not, do you believe that if you do all the same stuff that it might work for you? And I thought, yeah, there's a chance. There's a chance it could work for me. And the stakes were so high that if it didn't, what did I have to lose? What did I have to lose? So I got into the habit of praying. And believe me, the big book uses language like, we thought well before taking this step, or with a lot of misgiving, we took the next course of action. I got to tell you, that's a very polite way of saying it. I was very resistant to most of this work when I went through it the first time. Prayer, I didn't want to pray, and I didn't know what I was praying to. And my early prayers were just repeating his words. I was in a horrible mood. I had just gotten done with a full day's work. I'm walking from the bus stop back to the halfway house. I now need to do a chore at the halfway house, eat and eat dinner if there's any left over, clean up, get on the van to go to whatever meeting that we're going to, and try to get to enough sleep, which I wasn't sleeping much. Get enough sleep so I can go do it again tomorrow. Get up at 5 a.m. and go do it again tomorrow. I'm just in this horrible space. And out of frustration or, just being out of moves, I start yelling at God. I was walking down 12th Street in Central Phoenix, walking down 12th Street from Camelback to Indian School, and I'm just yelling at God while I'm walking down the street. I'm sure I looked crazy. I looked like I was just, and I was, by all definitions. I very much was arguing with myself. I was arguing with God. I was not operating in a regulated human fashion. I was highly dysregulated, walking down the street shouting. Now, zooming into what I was doing, I was praying. I said, God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if this is all bullshit. I don't know if this is all made up. I don't know if the Bible's real. I don't know if, the Torah's real. I don't know if Islamists are right. I don't know if everybody's wrong. I don't know. I don't even know who I'm talking to right now. But I was so hurt. I was in such a place of pain. I said, if you're real, I need you to show up. Because I'm willing to move my feet. I'm willing to get up and go to the bus. I'm willing to go all day long without drinking. It is really, really hard, but I'm going to go to this stupid meeting tonight. I'm going to go meet with my stupid sponsor. I'm going to do this stupid chore. But you've got to somehow make it happen for me. You've got to clear the path. You've got to make each step tolerable. Because I got to tell you, if my roommate's feet smell as bad when I get home as they did when I left, I'm fucking out of here. I'm leaving. I can't do it another day. And I would talk like this to God, and I wasn't sure who I was talking to. I wasn't sure if my words were being heard. I wasn't sure if I was doing it right or wrong. And it began this snowball effect where I began praying regularly. I found myself day after day into this habit of reaching out verbally to God and asking for help at its simplest form. And my prayers have never really been eloquent. I never really knew what to say, but I knew that I needed help, and I could ask for help. I could say, this is what I'm facing today, God. Don't know if you're real or if you can do this, but if anybody can, I guess it's you. So this is about time for you to come through in the clutch. I'm going to do my little part. I need you to do all the big stuff so that I survive this. And I would talk like that, and I started doing it every day. And I was embarrassed, I got to tell you, embarrassed to pray on my knees. Now, I live in a halfway house. I live with, a lot of other people that are in really, really bad shape that I'm probably never going to see again, right? Very transient in nature, halfway houses, especially from like the early 2000s. And I was so embarrassed that my roommate might catch me praying on my knees. Why I was so embarrassed, I don't know. If you're struggling with prayer and you're like, dude, I'm not getting on my knees, You're in good company. I get it. My sponsor asked me if I was praying every day, and I said yes. And then he said, "Are you praying on your knees?" And I lied, and I said yes. And the funniest thing happened over the next week or so. Every single meeting I went to, every person I talked to that was in the program, everyone I encountered, even people at work, and I didn't work with any program people, they were all talking about God. They were all talking about prayer. They were all talking about how they pray on their knees. It was the weirdest thing. And I finally got over myself, and I just started praying on my knees. And I was so nervous, and my hand would shake praying on my knees because I was so nervous to do it. I was so nervous somebody would see me and what they might think. I don't even know what I thought they would think, and I don't really care now. But in those early days, I want you to know it was not an easy process for me to get into the habit of prayer, but I did it. And this is where I really want to talk about what the 12 steps or spiritual growth in general really look like. Spiritual fitness is a lot like physical fitness. I got to tell you, I've done every kind of diet under the sun to lose weight, get bigger, put on muscle, all that stuff. I've done all the things, and we'll cover that in another series. But the times where I was really diet restricted, trying to really get lean, I got to tell you, first day into it, I'm second guessing and talking myself out of it. And that's with me being ultimately pretty healthy. Think about the person, think about me, fat and out of shape and low self-esteem. I need this. I want this. First day in the gym, I haven't eaten anything that tastes good all day, and now I'm sweating my ass off. Of course I'm not happy. Of course I don't want to do this. I am 1,000% trying to talk myself out of it actively. This is how real growth occurs, and not some other way. I don't know of any other middle way. Again, I've been in recovery for 20 years. I'm in great physical shape. I have a long marriage. All these things. My career is great. All these things are long range, and they require big upheavals. A big upheaval, if you read Atomic Habits, doesn't have to be some big climactic event. That's what a lot of us convince ourselves of. Well, something, if this thing happens, then I'll change. That doesn't have to be required. All you have to do is make a change today, a small change. And that's what I did. Like a fat kid on the treadmill, cursing myself, I started getting on my knees and praying to a God I didn't believe in, using words that I thought were empty. And you know what happened? I built the muscle of prayer. I started building a relationship with my Creator. And I didn't really know I was building a relationship with the Creator. I couldn't really bridge that gap mentally. I was doing what my sponsor told me to do because I didn't want to get thrown out of the halfway house. And I was starting to feel something. And I got to tell you, I rely on prayer consistently throughout my day, throughout my years, throughout the last, 2 decades. God is a central part of my life today. And it didn't happen overnight. And I didn't walk into, a 12-step meeting and go, I'm ready to find God. I thought I was never going to go to a church again. By the time I walked into, recovery at 26 years old, I was pretty sure I was going to be a loser. I was probably on my way to prison, and there was no way I was going to God with this. There was no way I was definitely ever going to a church with this. It's just not even on my radar. So here I am, a few months sober, living in a halfway house, and I'm doing all this stuff every day. I'm going to meetings. I'm going to work. I'm getting up early. I'm eating. I'm going to bed at the same time. And now I'm praying. And my life, even though I don't feel any different, is starting to improve. I'm starting to build the very first sub-layer of foundation for my new life. If I could have flashed forward and looked at my life 20 years from now, I would have been more gangbusters about doing it, right? I would have been like, oh, what, you're going to have a BMW? Hold on, let me see if I can get some prayer in today. I didn't know that, though. To me, it seemed weird and uncomfortable, and I didn't know what the results were going to be. I didn't know that the obsession to drink and use drugs could be expelled from my life permanently. I was still in this place where I was like, this is weird, I don't know, and I started doing it. So that is my recommendation to you. If you're familiar with prayer, awesome. I'm gonna challenge you to pray every day, 3 times a day. If you're not familiar with it and you're thinking this is super weird, just like I just described, that's equally awesome. This is a great place to just try it on like a t-shirt. Just try it. Try it against your own will. Really. I mean, if you're watching this and this is interesting to you, fucking try it. Just try it for a while. Try it 3 times a day when I say a while. Try it 3 times a day for 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks. See if you don't start to feel better after a while. You may not feel better after the first one. I didn't. But after doing it for a while, I really started to feel something. And I want to be clear on this higher power, God, religion issue. And I know I touched on it, but I want to kind of wrap up with this. When I discovered the 12-step program, I was convinced that it was a Christian program. And I was convinced that they were going to try to convert me and they were going to try and trick me. And, I had all these preconceived notions about it because I have what the pastor of my church calls church hurt. I grew up in a very toxic religious environment, and I was never going to go back. I had watched all the Zeitgeist videos, and I had read all these books, and while I wasn't a stout atheist, I was not buying into the whole religious nonsense, per my old script, my old narrative. The guy that introduced me initially, that I heard talk in jail, in Durango jail, is a Jewish guy, like visibly Hebrew, like tassels, sideburns. He's a wonderful human being. And when we sat in this meeting and I heard him, when I heard him share about how he couldn't stay sober because he hated himself when he stayed sober. And so eventually he would give in and he would drink again. And then his life would come unraveled because he couldn't control how much he drank. And then he would get sober, and then he would stay sober, just be miserable in sobriety. As he talked about that step one cycle over and over again, I thought, man, that's what's wrong with me. And he called that alcoholism, and he called himself an alcoholic. And I thought to myself, man, is that what I am? Is that what I have? And after the meeting, I walked up to this guy, and I just asked him, I said, man, what is this? Is this real? Because I was a little paranoid too. And he says, what do you mean? I said, we just did the Lord's Prayer. And you're clearly you're Jewish, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, oh, you think this is like a religious program? I was like, yeah, I'm really confused. He's like, listen, when I got sober, I didn't have any kind of relationship with God. I found God through the 12 steps. And over time, I sort of realigned with the traditions of my family and my childhood, and of my people. That's just the path I took. There are a lot of people that are Christians. There are a lot of people who are fairly devout atheists that end up staying, they become agnostic over time, and they stay sober a long time because they believe in a higher power. You don't really have to believe any one version of anything to join us. And because of his compassion, God, that makes me want to cry. When I say it makes me want to cry, I mean I have so much gratitude for the patience and compassion and genuine care. I mean, this guy's taken his free time to drive all the way down to the jail complex in South Phoenix to go through security. He's gone through whatever rigmarole you got to do to even get in there. And he's sitting here talking to me, an inmate, by my estimation, completely worthless, going nowhere, loser, trying to explain to me that I don't have to fit into any box to be welcome into God's kingdom. Changed my life forever. I wouldn't have got in any other way. I wasn't going back to church. This Jewish man welcomed me in to God's kingdom with open arms, said, you don't have to believe anything. You just come hang out with us. Just come to these meetings. If you don't have a safe place to go when you get out of jail, I'll help you find a place to go. He said, I'll help bring you to some meetings. I got some good men's groups that we go to. I can introduce you to a bunch of guys your age that are killing it right now, that have jobs and careers, and some of these guys are getting married and they're having kids. A lot of these guys are on fire, and I can introduce you to this thing that we all do we all do it together. And I was new, just like you are, at one time years ago. Very unsure and untrusting of this whole thing. I said, okay. I had no idea what I was in store for. So I want to impress upon you that if you're super unclear or even resistant to the whole God idea, you're in good company. I used to look at people that were so firm in their faith like they were aliens reading from some script that I just didn't get issued. I didn't understand it. Today, I'm probably one of those people for other people that talks like an alien. I totally became a Christian, not early on either, only just a couple of years ago. But I found, through a more agnostic path, I found a relationship with my Creator through the 12 steps. Literally that simple. The way I described it to you today in this episode. So if you're struggling with step 2, I totally get it. You're in good company. Anybody that doesn't have a lot of prior spiritual experience is going to struggle with this step. You know, a lot of people are very resistant to it. If you're hurting bad enough and you want something different, this is the next step. We believe that change is possible if I take action. You don't have to buy all the way into some religion. You don't have to buy back into the tradition of your family or your people. You can start clean slate. Just say, listen, I don't know what's out there. I don't know what it is, but I am willing to go through the rest of the steps and see if my life doesn't improve. Try that much faith. Enough faith that if you do the rest of the steps that your life might improve. And that, my friend, is enough to have a perfectly secure step 2 experience. Look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode.